911, what's the location of the emergency?
My daughter is missing.
What's your address, ma'am?
She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
Okay, what's her name, ma'am?
Carlie, Carlie.
And last name?
Brucia, Brucia.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. The audio that you just heard was a phone call from Carlie Brucia's mother to police informing them that her daughter had disappeared. You can already tell from the audio how much her mother is distressed and how strange this kind of thing is in their family and in their neighborhood. Now, Carlie had spent the night at her friend's house and she was walking home from her friend's place, but the friend's mother realized that it was a 1-mile walk to Carlie's house from the friend's home, and so she called Carlie's mother, letting her know that, hey, are you sure it's okay if I send her home? It's a 1-mile walk. How do you feel about that? And the mother basically said, I don't feel okay about that at all. She's very protective of her daughter, so she decided to call her husband, which was Carlie's stepdad, Steve Kanzler, that he should go try and pick her up and intercept her on her way. However, to the dismay of Carlie's family and her friends, her stepdad Steve was never able to pick her up. In fact, he never even saw her on the path that she should have been walking on. And it was at this moment when Carlie's mother Susan made the call to the police and realized that something truly horrible had happened. Now, back to the story. So Carlie's parents had realized that something was wrong, and after Steve, the husband and stepdad, came home without Carlie, Susan the mother realized something really is wrong. So they both got back into the car. They were driving around the neighborhood. They were shouting for Carlie, trying to figure out where she was, if she was even still around the area. They even went back to the friend's house to see if she was there, but she wasn't. But the strange thing is, while they were driving around, they found this kind of like shady wooded area with a red pickup truck just sitting there by itself. It was strange, to say the least. However, they kept driving around and they kept looking, and when they got to Carlie's friend's house that she had spent the night at and realized she wasn't there, they went back outside. They were getting back to the car and they realized across the street the same red pickup truck was there. But what was it doing there? Who owned it? And why did it seem like it had something to do with Carlie? Now, it was at this point when Carlie's family decided to call the police and alert them that their daughter was missing. And that's the phone call that you heard at the beginning. And after they got off the phone with the police, they decided to make flyers, and they were posting them all around the town, trying to, alert as many people. The police also put out a BOLO alert, which is be on the lookout for, this missing person, and to let as many people know of what's going on and who's missing and how to find them. Now, something strange that happened shortly after, while the families were passing out flyers, is the stepdad Steve. Now, this is just a really weird twist of events that happens next. So we go back to Steve, the stepdad, because while he was handing out flyers to like a local equipment shop, one of the people that he was handing out flyers to reported to the police that Steve had asked him for drugs and if he had any drugs for sale. But why would he ask for drugs? It's pretty weird, especially when your daughter is missing. The police immediately started questioning Steve and asked him, like, what's up with the drugs? Like, why do you want drugs? And Steve was like, it's a tough time, I just need something to kind of take my mind and take the edge off. The police couldn't find anything further on Steve, and he was therefore cleared as a suspect, despite, the whole thing being a little bit weird. I guess it's understandable being in the midst of this whole situation. However, while talking to the police, Steve did give them something else that was very interesting. The red pickup truck that we had seen earlier that was floating around the town and appeared right outside Carlie's friend's house that she had spent the night of, Steve actually knew the owner of the truck. It was some guy named Ron Choquette, and he was dating Carlie's friend's mother, and that's probably why the truck was nearby the house. The police then followed up with this lead, and they questioned Ron, and they were like, what are you doing? Like, driving around suspiciously? Carlie's gone missing. She stayed the night at, your girlfriend's house. Do you know anything about this? Ron admitted that he was the only adult present, in the house at one point. However, he had left the house way before Carlie did, when she was going on her way home. Co-workers were able to corroborate this story that he had in fact left before Carlie had, so he was pretty much cleared of being a suspect. And now, we're once again back to square one. Now, before we go too much further, guys, I'd like to take a moment to thank today's amazing sponsor, Native, the aluminum-free deodorant that we all love. I've talked about Native before, so you guys already know how much I enjoy their products. Because unlike most deodorants, Native just feels good on the body. It's not sticky and it dries quickly, not to mention it has other familiar ingredients such as coconut oil and shea butter. And aside from being aluminum-free, Native also offers plastic-free packaging with vegan and cruelty-free ingredients. Something I really like about Native is not just the wide variety of scents that they have, but also that it sticks with you even after a full day of moving around. You can expect up to 72 hours of odor protection. You guys already know my personal favorite is the Cashmere and Rain scent because it's so refreshing and smells great. But if you guys want to switch things up, I've also been using coconut and vanilla and lavender and rose. All Native scents are amazing and will absolutely give you that fresh feeling that'll last you all day. And aside from deodorants, Native also makes body washes and toothpastes that are also designed with love. Now, 3 deodorants would normally be $39, but with my link and code TerryTV2, you can get them for $26. Plus, with my code, you can also get 20% off any body wash or toothpaste. So once again, that's code TerryTV2 to save 33%. And now, let's get back to the crime. So we've already ruled out Carlie's stepdad as a suspect, and we've already ruled out this guy, Ron Choquette, who was dating Carlie's friend's mother. So that's 2 people, 2 possible suspects, both crossed off of our list. And so once again, the police are left dumbfounded and looking for answers. And so at this point, the police, without having any more suspects at the moment, they thought, let's figure out if maybe Carlie had run away. Maybe she left on her own accord. And so they investigated and they talked to Carlie's mother, they talked to Carlie's friend, they talked to Carlie's friend's parents, and it was apparently reported that Carlie did say things along the line of she didn't want to return home because she had too many responsibilities and she, didn't like it and she wasn't happy. And so police and the authorities had to realize that it was possible that perhaps she did leave on her own. Maybe she ran away. But Carlie's mother refused to believe that. She felt it in her heart while she told police that she truly felt something bad had happened to Carlie and that they need to figure out what. And so the police then decided to pull Carlie's dental records, just in the case that if something truly horrifying had happened, they could come up with a positive ID. Now, nothing was set in stone just yet, and we still didn't have any leads. And now the next course of action for police would be to continue investigating the area. They sent out canines to try to catch Carlie's scent and see where she might have went or see if it led anywhere. They were dispatched to her school, to her home, to the surrounding neighborhood, and they actually did catch a scent at her school. The dogs followed it, and police followed that all the way around town until it finally stopped at one place, a local car wash. The scent had led them to around the back of the car wash, and it had just disappeared. Nobody knew where she had gone. And this, once again, put investigators back to square one. And they probably would have had a really hard time finding anything else, at least immediately. But there was one key thing that helped them out. Luckily, the car wash had surveillance cameras in the back parking lot and the front, and they were able to pull the CCTV footage. And what they found was absolutely horrifying. The surveillance images indeed showed Carlie entering from around the back of the car wash. It was 100% her. But what happened next threw everybody off completely. An unknown individual entered the frame, some man, and he apparently walked up to Carlie, exchanged a few words, which we obviously can't tell what they were because there's no audio from the surveillance footage. However, you can see from the footage that he exchanges a few words with her, we're not exactly sure what, and then he seems to sort of kind of pull Carlie along with him. But you can tell from the looks of the images that it doesn't really seem like she wants to go with him, and she doesn't know why he's taking her with her. Now, once this footage was obtained and sent into Carlie's family, they did in fact confirm that it was their daughter. That was Carlie. But who was this man that entered into the frame and took her? The footage was then played on TV for hundreds of people to see. Lots of calls were coming in, people were leaving tips, but the majority of them just turned out to be nothing. Dead ends. It was beginning to look really grim for Carlie's family, who just wanted some answers and just wanted to find their daughter. After hundreds of tips and hundreds of dead ends, finally, something positive came in. A few people called in and said that they actually think they know who the person in the footage was. Because even though the footage was so blurry and you couldn't see the face, you could see a few different details, such as the guy was wearing a jumpsuit with some kind of name tag, he had short hair, he had tattoos on his forearms. All of these seemed to match the description of one individual, 37-year-old Joseph Smith. He was a local car mechanic and he had a criminal past record. Like, this guy was definitely someone that you should worry about. This guy had been to jail multiple times, years and years back, and he was actually out on parole now for a drug bust that had happened to him like 12 or 13 months prior. Now, one of Joseph's coworkers who did identify him from the CCTV footage did in fact tell police that, this guy didn't show up to work, the day before. He was a little bit strange, when I last saw him. Possibly he's still under drug use and maybe still using. And with all this information being unveiled, police decided to investigate more into Joseph and see what they could find. Police tracked down where Joseph was staying at the time, and it turns out that he had been kicked out of his home from his wife and his 3 young daughters, and he was staying with a friend, a wife and a husband who were kind of letting him stay with them while he sort of get himself back together. Now, the weird thing is, police looked over the CCTV footage to see if they could find any sort of vehicles that were pulling in and see if maybe they could find out if Joseph went into these vehicles and if he was driving one of them, but the only one that they had found was one kind of beige, yellowish station wagon. But they didn't have any footage of Joseph entering or getting out. This station wagon appeared to be the same one that was found at the place where he was staying. However, this station wagon did not belong to Joseph, but it in fact belonged to the husband and wife who owned the place that he was staying at. Now, when the police questioned Joseph, asking him hey, did you use this station wagon? Because it looks like the one from this CCTV footage. Were you driving this around this time, which was when Carlie had disappeared? But Joseph said, no, it wasn't me. I mean, yeah, I drove the car, but all I did was go down to the bay and look at the water for a bit. But you can ask my friends, they can corroborate my story. And so the police asked the wife of the house, hey, was Joseph here at this time, or was he down by the bay looking at the water? And she said, oh yeah, I can confirm he was in fact over there looking at the water. He wasn't near the car wash, he wasn't driving nearby. And so once again, police were left dumbfounded and feeling like they had gotten something wrong. However, it wasn't long after until the husband actually went to the police and told them, my wife had actually gotten the dates mixed up, and it wasn't this day that he was down at the marine looking at the water, it was this day, which means that the time where Carlie disappeared, Joseph no longer had an alibi. And after police found this out, they put him right back to suspect number 1. Oh man, this case has so many twists and turns. I hope you guys are keeping up with me. Now, as I mentioned, Joseph was on parole for using drugs 12 or 13 months before, so the police decided to investigate his car, the car that he borrowed from the husband and wife, investigate the room that he was staying in the house. They didn't find anything in the house, but in the car they did find drugs, and this in fact violated Joseph's parole. So they were able to bring him in officially. So now Joseph was in fact in custody. However, he was more in custody for the violating his parole than actually for, Carlie's disappearance. But there was some more tangible evidence that came forward. One of those pieces of evidence was that the husband, who owned the place he was staying at, had also come forward and said that the station wagon that he let, him borrow came back to him messed up, and things were moved around, and it looked like something had happened inside, it was messy and just looked weird. On top of that, when Joseph was brought in by the police, a friend of his came forward with very strange information. This friend basically told the police that on multiple occasions, Joseph had admitted to wanting to basically attack women. Now, during the initial interrogation, Joseph didn't really want to say anything. In fact, all he could think about was going out for a smoke. But of course, the police weren't going to let him do that, especially during a time when there's a little girl missing and you were the prime suspect. That's all you can think about. Like, come on now. Joseph was held in interrogation and still refused to kind of speak on anything or say anything that could help the police. All he wanted was his lawyer. Eventually, he was transferred to a jail until the police could look into things a little bit more. However, it turned out that they wouldn't have to look much further at all. Shortly after all of this, Joseph had made a phone call to his brother, John. And during that phone call, Joseph had admitted to kidnapping, abducting, and brutally attacking Carlie. John went to the police with this information and told them everything. And it turns out that Joseph had not only called his brother John and confessed to the crime, but he had also called his mother and confessed to her as well. And together with both testimonies, they were able to figure out exactly what happened to Carlie and where she was. Joseph had apparently taken Carlie's body and dumped it behind an old church in sort of a wooded enclosure area. He had told John this, he had told his mother this, and they had told the police this. And so the police went to that area, and they in fact found Carlie's body. Judging from the damage to the body, they could tell that her wrists were bound at some point. She had bruises kind of like on the side of her, indicating that she was probably dragged at some point. And an autopsy eventually revealed that her official cause of death was strangulation. Not to mention, on top of that, Joseph had left his DNA behind on Carlie's body. And it was in fact confirmed that she had been very harshly attacked. With all of this new information coming to light and the confessions, the DNA, it was no longer a secret what happened to Carlie. It was no longer a secret who had done it. Now, all that was left was to sentence and charge this murderer. Eventually, Joseph was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death by lethal injection. However, his lawyers basically prevented that happening while he was on death row. They were arguing for, to take away the death penalty and just to give him life. And this dragged on for years and years, I think about like 14 or 15 years, until just a couple years ago, Joseph had passed away from natural causes in prison. And so while waiting on death row, years and years later, comes the end of Carlie's murderer. And that is the end of the story. I sincerely wish the best for Carlie's family and her friends, and I hope that they're moving on and they can continue to move on from this terrible thing. There were so many twists and turns in this case. Let me know what you guys think about it down below in the comments. I think the police did a pretty good job in this particular case compared to some of the other cases that we've gone over, guys. And most importantly, I think they worked really well with the victim's family. Because a lot of the times, the victims will feel like they're powerless and they'll feel like the police aren't really doing much of anything at all. And sometimes the victim's family feel like they're the ones to go out there and actually investigate themselves. We've seen cases like that on the channel before. Anyways, all in all, I'm happy that the killer was caught and it's not some unsolved crime. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I hope you guys are having a great day. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Good night.